Hey YouTube, matches 860. Smoking some Haunted Bookshop in the Friday Savinelli. Here's a little tribute to you, John. You've got one of my favorite channels. If you guys don't watch Matches 860, John, and you definitely should. He's got one of the best channels going there. He used to do this great thing called Matches Moments that really helped introduce a lot of people, especially me. I think I was in. He mentioned me in one of the last few Matches Moments episodes that he did. And that was just about the time that I started making videos, so I felt like a little tribute was fitting, especially when I'm smoking a duplicate of his Friday Savinelli, and having a little Haunted Bookshop, which is a favorite of his, if not the favorite. So today we're going to talk about cake tobaccos. We're going to talk about my packing method, my method for extracting the most amount of flavor from a cake tobacco. And this could be said of flake tobaccos as well. And I think you can kind of use some of this for a loose cut tobacco. But for the most part, I was asked by our good friend Big Al the Crusher, about my method for packing things like plum pudding and Mississippi River. Everybody knows I smoke the heck out of those blends. I smoke a lot of Christmas Cheer. I smoke a lot of Gaslight. I smoke a lot of things that are either a flake or cake. And he had asked and said that he'd had some issues, he felt, extracting the full amount of flavor from these blends. So he asked me to share what I do to pack them. So I'm going to talk about packing them, but I'm also going to talk about a few other things that I think have a lot to do with your success in getting the most flavor from a bowl of tobacco. First things first, I think the first thing you must consider, when deciding what you're going to smoke a tobacco in and try to get the most amount of flavor is the width of the bowl. As you can see here, this is we won't say a relatively small bowl. This is a decent sized bowl. You can get a good smoke out of this, and that's 3/4 of an inch bowl drilling. For the most part, what's available is either 3/4 or 7/8. I have seen a 1 inch, like Mr. Brogg's Lumberjack. It has a 1 inch width bowl. I have seen something even larger than that, which is, to me, is unfathomable. I don't think I could deal with something much larger than that, but we'll say for the most part, you're dealing with 3/4 of an inch and 7/8 of an inch. In my experience, the 3/4 inch bowl almost begs to smoke Virginia or Burley. I've found that Virginias and Burleys do not need as much oxygen as a Latakia blend does to really smoke properly. That being said, the only exception to the rule would be the corn cob. And I think that's because corn cobs automatically have an advantage built into them to create more oxygen, which is that you'll notice that the shank here meets up with pretty much the very bottom of the bowl, right? And even on a poker, say I was holding a poker, which the shank might come in right in this area, but there may be another chunk of wood all the way down to here. There is no drilling past that air hole. The corn cob, on the other hand, the corn cob has a shank that comes in and then space below where it was punched out on both sides and then fitted with a cap, a hardwood cap, or at least most of them have that hardwood cap at the bottom. But that leaves enough space underneath to create some oxygen. So no matter what you smoke in a corn cob, it will smoke as it's supposed to, which is probably why corn cobs such a have such a high value when it comes to using as a pipe smoking material. It's got the right amount of airflow in it. But for the purposes of a briar pipe, I find that a 3/4 inch bowl lends itself very well to a Virginia, a Burley, Perique, pretty much anything but Latakia. Something that is that has Latakia in it, whether it be a little or a lot. Anything from a light smattering of Latakia all the way up to a good old-fashioned lat bomb really needs to be placed in a 7/8 bowl. You're getting a lot more air in there. You're getting a lot more space for that Latakia to burn. So the bowl size should kind of be one of the first things that you consider. Now, of course, you're going to have to take the time and experience it yourself and experiment a little bit, and see what works best. But in my experience, 3/4 inch bowl, Virginia, Burley. In my mind, things are either Virginia blend or a Latakia blend. It's either Virginia or English. That's how I think of them. It's either it has Latakia or it doesn't, for the most part. If you're gonna, you'll need to experiment a little bit. That's what I'm trying to say here. Is you're gonna need to find out what works best for you. Second thing you're gonna need to consider is dry time. How dry does this cake or flake tobacco need to be? Like I said, this is going to be mainly focused on cakes and flakes. Cakes in particular, because that's what was asked of me. Dry time is a big difference from a flake to a cake, and an even bigger difference from a flake to a loose tobacco or a cake to a loose tobacco. Loose tobacco, it's already had time. There's no pockets. There's no really compressed areas of tobacco that you have to worry about. You may, something like a cube cut where you've got some loose and, some pieces of tobacco, larger pieces of tobacco. You kind of have to go 50-50 on that. You have to figure that one out on your own. I haven't really smoked anything cube cut. But something like a cake, you really need to consider how densely it was compressed and how densely you're going to pack it. Some people, if you have a wide open draw, an overly open draw in the stem, you're going to need to pack that bowl a little bit tighter. If it's a restricted draw, you're going to need to pack it a little bit looser. But the dry time has way more to do with it than any of that, because if it's too moist, it will not smoke properly. You're just going to get clouds of moisture coming back as you're drawing on that tobacco. As you're sitting there smoking your pipe, you're just going to taste moisture. And moisture is kind of not really where the flavor's at. Moisture's in that tobacco. The flavor is in the tobacco. So you're going to want to eliminate the moisture by dry time. You'll have to experiment, because a cake and a flake are much different than loose tobacco. And then, like I said, there's a difference between flake and cake. Flake, you may have to let dry a little bit longer. Cake, you can easily rub out and get to a more manageable consistency where you will not have to dry it out as much, but you will have to experiment and find at what point is it dry enough to really enjoy. On an added note there, if you're smoking a Virginia blend, something with a high concentration of Virginia, even if it is something like Mississippi River, they do have a very large concentration of Virginia in there. You're going to need to consider how old that blend is. Older Virginias, anything with a couple years of age on it, will take and handle that moisture a lot better than a younger Virginia. Case in point, I was smoking some Mosquito that I have had sitting around for about 2 years. I didn't really let it dry at all. Smoked like a charm. I opened a brand new tin and did the same exact thing. They were pretty much the same moisture level. It was almost like smoking wet paper. It was really bad. I didn't really like it. I didn't let it dry out enough. So you kind of have to break everything up or spread it out a little bit just to let it dry. You will find with flakes that if you do not at least pull it out a little bit, I'll take a flake and just kind of pull it sideways and get it to open up a little bit so it'll dry a little bit more evenly. Because if you don't, then you're going to end up with the outside edges being dry and the middle still being soft and wet, or very close to that. So dry time, definitely look into that. And the biggest thing here is packing. Now, I mentioned before that corn cobs had, to me, a big advantage in that they had an airway built into them. You've got more space underneath where the shank comes into the pipe to allow air to stay underneath there. So you, unless you literally took the tobacco and were kind of jamming it down on the sides and cramming it all the way in there, there's really no way you can overly tighten. You can there's no way you can overpack a corncob pipe to the point where it is so restricted that you don't have enough air there to really smoke it. Now, of course, you probably could if you really tried, but you'd really have to put some effort into that. So, what you're going to need to do is find a way to pack your pipe without blocking that little space of airflow on the bottom. Now, as I said here, the shank goes directly to the bottom of the bowl. The draft hole is at the very bottom of the bowl. So you really have to find a way to create the air pocket down there to allow yourself enough air underneath the bowl where you're not going to get that much moisture. So what I've been prone to do is take the tobacco, once it's at its proper moisture level, put it in my hand, take my bowl, flip it upside down, face down onto the tobacco, and then rub. And this will get enough tobacco in the bowl to start you off, and it's very loose at the bottom. So now what I do is I take a pinch, much like the Frank method, and just place it on top and slowly, it's a very small pinch, slowly work it in with my thumbs. Go around, go around, work it in without actually jamming it down in there. You go around so that way you've got some space in there. Whatever you use to light it doesn't really matter. If you're like, I've been using matches, Bic lighters, and more recently a Zippo lighter, which has no fuel, which is why it's not out here. When I use those, I usually tilt my bowl a little bit. This one I can actually direct my, you see I can direct the flame directly into the bowl. The Zippo I kind of go sideways a little bit, so that way I don't have fuel coming at the wick. So that way you eliminate the possibility of fuel flavoring your tobacco. And then from there, what I do is light it. I can't remember the last time I used like a charring light and then an actual light. I usually just go for it right off the bat, and I can usually get it to light and stay lit with one light. I don't think lighting makes a really big difference. It's really the method, what you use to light it with, that seems to make the biggest difference. Whether it be a lighter, matches, Zippo, what have you. That's where some flavor gets imparted, depending on how you light it. I have a tendency to light first with a match, and then move on to a lighter or something like that. But the biggest thing is how you pack it. Now, an alternate method that I've been using lately would be just kind of like modifying the Frank method, almost like whether it be loose tobacco, a cake, or flake, treat them all the same, rolling it all together into a little package, and then just taking it and stuffing it in the pipe without sprinkling anything additional in there. It's essentially just trying to get 3/4 of the bowl filled tightly. Not over tightly, but what I mean is, enough where it's compacted into the area here and not down here. So I have air underneath. And that, for me, so what I'll do there is I'll either roll it together or I'll pack it all together in my hand and then just kind of slip it into the pipe right here. And again, either do a little, sometimes I'll just rub it on my palm to work it in, or I'll do the thumb thing. The Frank method is really a good method to look into, because pretty much everything I do is a combination of something else and the Frank method. It's been working very well for me for a long time. And then once you get it going, like I said, I say skip the charring light and just keep going until that whole thing stays lit. Tamp it down, keep puffing, whatever you gotta do to keep it lit. That seems to work well for me. When it comes to the case of the cake tobaccos, Plum Pudding, Mississippi River, take your time with them as well. There's no point in rushing to smoke it. I've got myself a big old, break out a Jake Hackert. You got a nice big 7/8 bowl, a nice tall bowl, a good piece of briar. We know that the draft is wide open because he takes very good care to make sure it's open. You're looking at a lot of different things here to make sure you're getting a pleasant smoke. But the biggest thing is looking at what size is your bowl, how much dry time did you put into it, and how did you pack it. Focusing on that will kind of help you create the best smoking experience that you can. That way you're not getting a lot of moisture back down the shank and into the mouthpiece. You're not going to have to continually clean the pipe or run a pipe cleaner through it. You notice that I was running a pipe cleaner through as I was smoking, but honestly I was getting no moisture. I do that out of habit because I like to make sure that tobacco is staying further away from the draft hole more than anything. And when you take care and you take the time to kind of build a little ritual and check moisture, how did I pack it, what size bowl am I smoking it in. I have dedicated pipes. Like this will always be Virginia and Burley and such. There will never be Latakia placed in this pipe, unless of course I get a second one that looks just like it, and I might try it just for the heck of it. Sometimes you'll find a pipe that's a little outside of the bounds of these rules. I did have like a Sandow pipe that it did have a 3/4 inch bowl on it, and it smoked Virginia pretty well. But I did slip a Latakia blend in there, and it smoked like a charm. And it was because it was older briar. It was taking up all that moisture, and because it was such a wonderfully crafted bowl, the way that the shank met up with the bowl, it left me plenty of room to make space to have air in there and still have plenty of tobacco on top. So you can see that airflow makes a big difference. The size of the bowl makes a big difference. Dry time makes a huge difference. So if you look into those things, you might find yourself with a much more enjoyable smoke, and you'll be able to find your way into blends that would normally give you a lot of moisture or kind of lack the flavors that a lot of people are detecting. I've found early on that people would say, wow, I tasted this and it tasted like that, and I really I really enjoyed this, and I tried it and I was like, yeah, I don't taste any of that. This blend sucks. Well, over the past few years I've put the time in, and I've experimented a lot, and this is what I've come up with, and I'm telling you, I enjoy a lot of these blends that now that I would have never thought about buying again, I have plenty of in my cellar because of that. Because I took the time to kind of look into it and see what's going to work, what's going to make it better. So I hope these tips helped you. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I probably did. I usually don't kind of lose track of what I'm saying as I'm saying it if I jump around so much. But I hope you guys get something out of this. If you have questions or you want me to talk about it a little bit more in depth or give some examples, I can definitely do that. So for now, you guys enjoy your afternoon, and we'll see you again real soon.